Hey guys, welcome to my April reading wrap-up. This month, I feel like I didn't read a ton of books. I'm going to be talking about all of these books, plus a couple of ebooks in this video. I once again filmed a clip kind of shortly after I finished each book or two. I also am joined by a cup of hot tea because I feel like I'm losing my voice. My throat is very, very sore. I will say, overall, this was a very slumpy reading month. I didn't despise really any of the books that I read, but I loved one of them for sure. Well, a couple of them. I really was into the nonfiction this month, but I just wasn't in my reading groove. We were talking about it over on my Patreon, and some people had also had this problem in April where you were just like very aware that you were reading. We weren't really getting sucked into the stories. I was totally there. I totally agree with the people that were talking about that. But there was some really good books. So here is my reading wrap up, and then I will come back at the end and talk about the last two books. Welcome to update number 1. I have 2 books to share with you today. The first one I finished is All Fall Down. This is a YA book by Ali Carter, and this is one that my daughter really wanted me to read this month. It is about a girl named Grace who, when she was, I want to say 12, she saw her mother murdered, and her kind of life goal is to find the guy that murdered her and make him pay. And at the beginning of this book, she moves to Embassy Row, which is this street with a bunch of embassies in this fictitious European country, and she's gone there to live with her grandfather, who is an ambassador for the United States and this country. Okay, not sure what was going on with the focus, but I think we're better now. Yeah, so because my daughter recommended this book, I kind of had some ideas going into it, some like assumptions, I guess. And it was so much heavier than I was expecting because of what Grace saw when she was 12. She spent a long time in like the psych ward and dealing with mental health issues and people that don't believe her, and these really heavy topics that I was not expecting, but I really did enjoy the book. It was different in a good way than what I thought it was going to be. And so this is a trilogy, and I recently found the second book at the thrift store just randomly, so I might pick that up later this month. We'll just see. I want to get through some of the books on my TBR before I start veering off, although I'm already veering off a little bit, but I'm trying to stick to my TBR a little bit more this month than I did last month. So definitely would recommend this. It's if you're kind of like into more like espionage vibes with like mental health stuff going on, then I would recommend this. And then I'm so bad at buddy reads, and this is why I don't usually do buddy reads, but when someone is picked as my patron of the month over on Patreon, I give them the chance to buddy read with me. And so the book that was picked was The Words Between Us. I was buddy reading this with my patron Nancy, and she decided we were going to read 8 chapters each day. I went in and I marked the pages. I don't think it's too bright. I marked the spots that we were supposed to be reading. This was supposed to take us 5 days, and I finished it today, and it's day 2. So this is why I'm a terrible buddy reader. But I think that is better than being really behind. So I wrote down my thoughts at each section as I went, and I will share them with her when she gets to those sections because I don't want to spoil things for her. But this is a dual timeline but single perspective book where we follow a girl named Robin. In the past, she is 14 and her dad was a senator, and him and her mom have just gone to jail for, he was selling weapons to Al-Qaeda, I guess, and so there was like some embezzling and some murders, and he went to jail, and then she went down as, I don't know, like an accessory or something. She knew information. So Robin is sent to live with her grandmother, who she's never met before, in this trailer with a parrot called the Professor. And so that's what happens in the past timeline. We're with her while she's like working through a lot of issues. There's been like a lot of like understandably messed up people in these books so far. And then we're present day with Robin as she is working, she owns a bookstore, and has things going on in her life, and things from the past are coming up. And this is just a book that I couldn't put down. I don't know. Yeah, you can see all those tabs, right? There was a lot going on, a lot I enjoyed. There are a lot of classics that she reads when she's 14, 15, and she writes poetry. And so I was tabbing some of the books, and I was gonna try to read all of these at some point. Most of them are on my list of 50 classics I would like to read before I die, but not all of them. I'm pretty sure I don't have Moby Dick on there, but I would like to get to that one someday. But it was so fast, and it seemed like every 8 chapters when we were supposed to stop for the day, it was like a major cliffhanger, and I had to keep reading. So I did. That being said, I'm not sure what I'm rating this. I feel like it's like a 4.25. I don't normally do 0.25s, but it feels like a little bit more than a 4, but not a 5, and I don't think it's quite a 4.5. So I'm not sure. I haven't rated it yet, but I flew through it. Lots I did like. There was some really good quotes. Where was? Let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, I liked this quote. Easy things aren't worth your time. It's the hard things we really love in the end. The hard things we manage to do despite everything. And that's a really good reminder when you're going through a hard season. Not that I am right now, but I just tabbed that for future. Yeah, and I tabbed all the poems that she wrote, and there was a lot I enjoyed. And this is another book about books, which I just did a video about, of course, and then I have read 2 books about books since then. Yeah, I would recommend this one. I did quite enjoy it. So far, the month is off to a really good start. Let's hope this just continues all month. 2 more updates. The first one is a little sad for me, but it's about time I made this decision. And that is that I am going to officially DNF Emma. This book, I just sent out a newsletter last week saying, yeah, I'm determined I'm going to finish this book this month. And you guys, it's just not happening. I'm a little more than halfway. I've read this book before. If this was a book I hadn't read, because it's a classic and because I just wanted to know more about like how I feel about Jane Austen in general, I probably would have finished it. But I've been reading this since November, and it's putting me in a reading slump as far as classics goes. It's preventing me from reading other classics I want to read. So I'm just going to quit it. I do have no problem normally quitting books if I don't like them. This one, I don't even know why I wasn't picking it up. It's not that I wasn't liking it. The first time I read it was back in, I think, 2013. I wasn't reading any classics around that time. Not very good at reading, just like slowly getting back in post-university kind of thing. And I read this book in less than 2 weeks, or around 2 weeks. And yeah, it's just time. I put it down. Love this edition. These are the Wordsworth editions. Love it. And I did enjoy this book. It was my favorite. I'm not sure if I can still say it's my favorite. That spot might be held by Persuasion now. Maybe I'll read it some other day. But this is apparently just not that year. So I'm officially DNFing a book that I've already read. And then a book that I just finished is Sanderson's Secret Project #2 for the year. So if you're trying to stay away from like any spoilers, I will try to put up a timestamp and you can skip ahead, or whenever the cover of the book is gone from the screen, then you can check back in. I tried to stay away from spoilers when the book came out. Jared emailed me the file, and so I knew the title. It is, let's see if I can remember now, The Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Medieval London, I think is the title. It's very long. And we have the ebooks, but I was having troubles like downloading the actual file, getting it onto the Kindle app, and I didn't want to know anything before that. And so I totally understand other people that don't want to know stuff going in. I am giving this book 4 stars. It is so different. You can just tell Sanderson is having fun with these secret projects. They're great. They're fun. They're funny. I think I laughed out loud like 3 or 4 times, like actually out loud during this book. So it is science fiction, and we start with a guy that doesn't remember anything, and in the like author's note at the end, Sanderson does say this is like he calls it a white room story, like this other book I'd never read, and he said Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary has also done it really well, and I really liked that one. But because of the story, the type of story, you don't want to say much going in because you are discovering with this guy what is going on. So our main character ends up in this location. He doesn't know where he is. Definitely somewhere in history, and he's just trying to figure out like who he is, like what he's doing there, like all the things. And yeah, I don't know, Sanderson, he just does a good job like having humor. Really, literally laugh out loud parts, humor and interest, and I just really enjoyed it. I like that I've just not known going into these what I'm in for, and both of them so far I would say are like science fiction, which is definitely more my area than fantasy, although this one did have like some fantasy elements as well. I like science fiction better than fantasy, so that's been good for me. So that is all for right now. So I finished this book and I don't know what to say. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I mean, I didn't hate it. I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, and that's being a bit generous. It's very interesting. So the author, Ransom Briggs, which, interesting name to begin with, did something very unique. He used old photographs that he has found in other people's vintage collections and his own, and he has written a story based off of it. So our main character, I'm totally blanking on his name. He grew up hearing stories from his grandfather about where he grew up, and it's like he thought his grandpa was making up stories, and he finds out fairly quickly that it wasn't made up. There is actually a home for peculiar children. I feel like the name is a bit of a spoiler because I feel like it's a while before you actually even get that far. This is the book that I read for a book you previously DNF'd, and I don't know, I'm glad I read it. Now I finally know what it's about. I'm not going to keep it. It was a little too YA, but I appreciate the like creativity, and also this makes me want to collect vintage photographs. There's so many interesting ones. So I've read it, checked that off of my like mental box, and now I can move on and not continue this series. I'm curious to know if you've read this one, like your thoughts on this, because I feel like people probably have quite a bit of thoughts on this book / series. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you've read it, let me know. 2 more books to wrap up. The first one is a nonfiction, Every Woman a Theologian. I just bought this one, I think end of March, and really enjoyed it. I tabbed it up a lot, and my plan is to go through now and take notes on all the different things that I tabbed there. So I started listening to Felicia Masonheimer's podcast. It's called Verity, and it's very much about theology. This book, I don't like the title. I don't like when people make something out to be a book for women when it doesn't have to be. I know that for marketing and publication reasons, that's why they do it. But this should really be called Theologian for Dummies. It's just theology at its most basic, and I really appreciated it. Even Felicia Masonheimer, I know her theology, she stands in some different places than I do, but for the most part what she does is, unless something is blatantly against scripture, if it is, she'll say that, but otherwise she just says like, here's this one and here's this one, and kind of lets you figure out where you fall in different things. And so this was a fairly fast read, like it was easy to read, but just lots of things that I need to go through and write down so that I can remember things better. But highly recommend this book, and I've already recommended it quite a bit a bunch of people from church and my mom are reading it / have requested it or are buying it because I keep talking about it. So until recently, I didn't really know why I should even know any kind of theology. It just felt like, I don't know, something I didn't need to really know. But I've changed my mind recently, and I think Jared and I are actually going to do a podcast episode at some point in the future on the topic on our podcast channel. It's called Poured Out Podcast. This has definitely made me think a lot, and like I said, definitely recommend it. And then the other book I finished was an ebook. It is The Kingdom of Ruses. So this was one of my Patreon picks for the month. I picked 2 this month because once again I picked a Sarah book. So this was the non-Sarah book, and it is a fantasy story where this family has been, it's like the Prime Minister's family. They serve the prince, the eternal prince, so he like never dies, and the Prime Minister's family, the role of Prime Minister is inherited often like we think like kings and queens inherit the title. But the only thing is the Prime Minister's family has actually been lying for a number of years, and there isn't a king or a prince. I mean, they are just pretending that there is. And yeah, and then there's like a magical element, so they've been able to like conjure up like a doppelganger for people to kind of see in passing every now and then, so people aren't completely suspicious. But I really enjoyed it. So this is my second book by, oh, I always forget her name, Kate Stradling, I think. She just writes like a light fantasy. I read The Legendary Inga, also at the same patron's suggestion a few months ago, and I like her like light fantasies, like a little bit of fantasy, but it's not so much that I have to think of and like learn a whole new world. Really enjoyed it. This one is the first in a trilogy, so I'm not sure if I'm going to continue the trilogy, or I hear that her newest book is, I think, fantasy but has some like Pride and Prejudice elements. Very curious about that one, so I'm gonna go read another one of hers soon. Not sure which one exactly. Also recommend that book. Had a lot of fun with that one as well. Apparently I'm just doing these updates in 2s this time. I ended up DNFing this poetry collection that I got, I don't know when it was, 4, 5, 6 months ago. I really wanted to like it. It is by, yeah, you're fine. The door's actually open. You can go through. It's called Seasons of Dragonflies by Jeff Reed, and his daughter Randy Lynn Reed has a channel here on YouTube. Beautiful, beautiful videos she makes. I don't watch all of her videos. I more watch Morgan Long, who's one of her friends. Anyway, I like poetry, and I like certain kinds of poetry, but not all of them. And this is a lot of like personal family poetry for different people in his family. So that didn't feel very applicable. Why is the cat meowing? And there were some poems that weren't like personal family poem type things, but I don't know, they just weren't my style. So I will just put this in a little free library somewhere, and maybe somebody else will enjoy it. So there's that. And then, this is hard to do when you have a giant cat in your arms. Then I finished Teatime Discipleship by Sally Clarkson. As of filming this hasn't even come out yet. I don't know how I got my copy so early. This is sharing faith 1 cup at a time, and it's lots of practical ideas on how to share your faith over tea, invite people over, different recipes to make. And Sally Clarkson is just so encouraging. She is really good at creating beauty. She's always talks about how she, we serve a God who created a lot of beauty, and how she likes to emulate that. And I feel like that's something I'm not very good at. And so one of my goals for my birthday is going to be to try to do that better in the next year. Definitely recommend the book. It has lots of pictures. It's very much like a coffee table book. You know what? I'll just overlay a little bit of B-roll here, a little snapshot of the inside, because I can't open the book while holding a cat. Yeah, definitely recommend it. The pictures are gorgeous. There's not a lot of words, like the font is really big, but I can see myself going back to it quite a bit. Actually, as I finished it, there was a quote that I really liked. Will I be able to find it? I don't know if this is the specific one, but there's 2 here. The world around us holds temptation and darkness. That is why we all long for a place of comfort, a sanctuary in which to restore the light in our souls, and where we can experience the truth of God's love for us through all our senses. And then, oh man, you're so heavy. For our children to learn to love God, they must see our love for God in the way we sing around the house, the way we sip a cool drink on the porch while enjoying the summer flowers, and at the kiss me goodnight bedtime moments. Sometimes I think Christians feel guilty about enjoying life too much, as though God is more pleased with service, seriousness, or somber expression. Yet God intended that we as adults enjoy our days and find satisfaction in them. As we walk hand in hand with God, we are intended to experience pleasure and fulfillment. If we see passing on faith as a mere obligation, our lives will overflow with duty and pressure, and we will become discouraged and weary. God did not make us to be slaves of works, and God didn't make us to use us. He is complete. God wanted sons and daughters to love, communicate with, and engage with. He wants to enjoy and be close to us as a parent longs to be near beloved children. He created a gorgeous world to enjoy, food to feast on, experiences to enjoy, and as one of my children told me, "Mama, I'm so glad our God is a God of puppy dogs, spicy fajitas, and music to dance to." And so I just feel like that hit home, something I need to work on, and I really enjoyed the book. So there we go. Now I'm gonna go hold my cat somewhere else. Once again, I have 2 more books to update. One of them is a big one. Friends, A Poem for Every Day of the Year. I started this book, I think about 1.5 years ago, and I finally finished it. I tried to read like an actual poem every day, and then I took a break, and then I read a few more than 1 poem a day for the last little while. I've enjoyed this collection by Jane McMorland Hunter. There's a great selection of classic poetry from a variety of authors in here. I ended up tabbing quite a few different poems, and I think it's a good introduction to different poets that I might want to check out even more. And then the other book I just finished is Vivid. This is the first book in the Color Theory series. I think this is the only one that's out, and the second one is coming out right away. So this is a Christian, it's by Enclave Publishing, who is a Christian science fiction and fantasy publisher, although not all their books are like, you know, strongly Christian themed. I have a goal to read 10 of their books this year, and I think this is number 4 off my list. So in this one, we follow a girl named Ava. She lives in a world where there's color magic. So in the world, there's red and blue, and there used to be yellow, but yellow people were called mentalists, and they could do like mind control stuff. And when Ava was young, they mostly imprisoned or killed all the yellow mentalists because they thought they were dangerous. And then right at the beginning of the book, a yellow mentalist named Elm escapes, and so they're on the hunt, and of course she comes across him and tries to figure out like what's all going on in the world. I enjoyed the book. I was reading this for a Christian booktuber book club, and I know some of the ladies loved it. I didn't love it. There were a few things in the like magic system that didn't make sense. Like there's one point where Ava is making photocopies of lemons because when they got rid of all the mentalists, they got rid of all the yellow things because people draw on the color. So if they get rid of the yellow things, any mentalists they didn't capture have nothing to draw on for power. And so she's making copies of lemons somehow. The photocopier like actually makes things. And she used a scissor to jam the stop button out. But Ava is a red, which is like agility and strength, I think are the powers. I don't remember exactly. But there are people that have like strength powers. So how would pulling out the stop button stop the copier? Couldn't they just do something else to make it stop since they have the power of like strength? There was a few things that just felt like maybe not all the way thought through. And then there is a character in here, like a love interest, who calls Ava Miss Ava. And so even though they keep saying how old he is and stuff, he sounds, because he calls her Miss Ava, it sounds like there's a big age gap. I think it's like 2 years maybe, but he sounds like an old person, plus he uses a cane. And so I kept just having these weird like oh, this is a love interest, but he sounds really old, but he's not, but he has all these like old tendencies, and that was kind of bothering me. So I may pick up book 2 at some point. It's not a rush for me. I enjoyed the idea. This reminds me a lot of Fox, the book by Nadine Brandeis, because that one also has to do with color, and then people wear masks that correspond with their color. Yeah, it's a cool idea. Didn't love it. Probably gonna give it 4 stars. It's kind of like a 3.75-ish. So take that as you will. This month has felt like one massive, big reading slump, but I managed to finish another book. Oh, my nose is cold. You know when that happens? It's so bizarre. Starfish. This was one of my patron picks for the month when I was doing my pulling cards. I pulled 2. I did Kingdom of Ruses and Starfish. It took a long time for this one to come in from the library, but it was a quick read. It is a middle grade free verse novel, so not a whole lot of words per page. Quick read. I think this is like a 4.5-star book. I really enjoyed it. Probably not the right word. Our main character is an overweight girl who is people that think they're cool because they have loud trucks. I don't get it. It's not cool. I think she is like 11-ish. I think it mentioned like her age one time in here. So I don't feel confident in that. And so it's talking about bullying and all sorts of stuff related to being overweight. And the hardest part of this book, but also, yeah, this part like made me kind of not like the book, but it was really well done, is the fact that her mom is the biggest bully. And it was heartbreaking to read, but thankfully she had, and her siblings, and her mom, and often not even her dad, wouldn't really even stand up for her when they were putting her down. But her dad was the biggest, he was in her corner the most out of her family, for sure. Way more than other people. And then she had a couple of friends. But it was very well done. The interesting thing is, like, there's a few things where it's like, yeah, that seems a little far-fetched. But then there's an author's note where it says it is a work of fiction. And a lot of people will read this and think, it's definitely fiction because people would never say or do such cruel things. But a variation of every single mean thing people did or said to Ellie happened to me when I was a child. So, yeah, highly recommend this book. My daughter went on to read it after me, also flew through it, also gave it about the same rating. I don't know if, oh, the author is Lisa Phipps. More of my barcode issues. Barcodes should go in the back for the library. In the back where, right in the middle where there's pretty much never anything of interest. I don't know what I was saying because my brain just ping-pongs constantly. I definitely recommend it, especially for middle school kids, whether or not they're bullied, because they might be the bully. I don't know, 100% recommend it. Words just not working for me right now. And looking at my completed stack of books, it is substantially smaller than last month, and numbers don't really matter, but I've started a bunch of books and just am struggling to get into them, to finish them. But it's not that I'm disliking them, like I'm not DNFing them. I don't feel like they're bad enough for me to quit. I'm just in a slump, I guess. Hopefully it doesn't continue past this month, and hopefully I can at least get another 1 or 2 books done by the end of the month. I don't know, we'll have to see. Okay, 2 more books finished, as is kind of the theme for this month. The first one that I finished is A Praying Life by Paul E. Miller, and you guys, this is my favorite book, possibly of the year. Definitely my favorite book of the month. I tabbed all the things. I wrote so many quotes down in my commonplace journal. I just really love this. This is exactly what I needed for like revamping my prayer life. If you are a Christian, I think you need to read this book. It's not like if you're a Christian and you're struggling with prayer, you need to read this book. No, even if you think that you are doing well with prayer, you need this book. So Jared and I have a podcast where we talk about like Christian living stuff. I mean, it's pretty broad, and in the next couple of weeks here sometime, we're gonna be talking about this book because He read it first and then I read it, and there's so much to discuss. I don't even know where to start. There were just so many things that really, I guess, I don't even know if they're like really that revolutionary, but it felt like it to me. I have so much I want to say about this, and I don't want to make this video like an extra 30 minutes long. So I will just say, if you can get your hands on this, read it. And if you can't get your hands on it, figure out how to get your hands on it. This is definitely the book that I'm going to be talking about on my Patreon book club, which I'm going to be doing in like 2 hours from now. We're going to be hopping on, and this is the book that I'm going to be raving about the most. The last book that I finished, actually today is Saturday the 29th, so we're not even quite at the end of the month yet, but I don't think I'm going to finish any other books. So the last one I'll be finishing for this month is Magic for Marigold. I picked this one out for my TBR as an alliterative title, and this is an Ella Montgomery book about a girl named Marigold. We follow her kind of from the age of 6 till like 11 or 12. And I did tab a lot of things here as well. This is mostly like Ella Montgomery's like small town isms. She writes quirky small town people so well, and is someone that grew up in a small town with a lot of gossip. I can relate to a lot of this, like a lot of these old people just feel like real people that I've met. So there's a lot of these things are not like, oh, I love this, but like, oh, this person's quirky and I really don't like them, but I love how she wrote them. Like this one person, their clan, so we're like, Marigold is part of the Leslie clan, the family, and they're very big on their own people. And the clan frown on Nina, who is one of the people of their family. They thought she was very tactless, but what could you expect of a woman who wrote poetry and peddled it about the country? Writing it might have been condoned and concealed. After all, the Leslies were not intolerant, and everybody had some shortcomings, but selling it openly? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that going on. So got another Ella Montgomery checked off. May is Montgomery, so I'm going to be reading even more Ella Montgomery this month, and I'm looking forward to some of the other stuff. I'm going to be reading a little bit more, but there you have it. That is all my books. Adventure, you say? I'll pack on my bags. There's my mug. This was given to me years ago by Holly, and it's still like one of my absolute favorite mugs. My tea is actually still too hot to drink though. I would love to hear what you read during the month of April. Did you also have like a slump? Because it's not just me, and I'm curious to know how many of us were feeling slumpy. Is it the weather? What is it? Hopefully it doesn't continue into May. Let me know if you're interested in picking up any of the books that I read this month.